Chapter 27. My first year of nursing school was a shock to the system. I wanted to do well. I had a lot to prove to myself, including the fact that life could go on. And anyway, I didn't really know how to underperform. In order to both keep up with the workload and attend to my cannabis habit, I devised a deal with myself that as long as I attended classes and worked on my assignments during the day, I would restrict my dope smoking till the day's work was done. To a certain extent this worked. I was getting good grades and was more or less keeping up. Outside of study hours, though, it was a different story. Andrew lived just round the corner from my flat and we were spending a lot of time together. He was drinking heavily at this point, and we'd get together in the evenings, play pool and drink bourbon, and I'd smoke my pipe and we'd rant about the world and the psych system and everything that was stinkingly wrong with the universe. Meanwhile, the pressure of the course was intense. Towards the end of the year, the students went out on placement. I was sent to a rest home hospital with a dubious reputation, and that was tough. Seeing people institutionalised, vulnerable and powerless re-stimulated my emotions about my own experiences, and I felt a lot of anger towards what I saw as a culture of laziness and lack of care about the place. I could not still my questioning thoughts of, what if this was me or someone I loved living in here? Since my own incarceration, these matters were no longer academic or the sort of things that only happened to other people. There was little to separate me from the lived experience of those I was caring for. I wanted to set them all free. I couldn't just close my eyes and get on with it. I'd been ruined for that permanently. It had been a long time since I'd been required to get up every day and go to work. By the end of the 3 weeks I was exhausted and things were starting to get weird again. I was having a lot of neck pain and once more fixated that I therefore must be dying. With exams and assignments due, sustaining this pace wasn't very realistic. I decided to take the following year off to consider whether completing the course was something I really wanted to do. Several things happened which helped me to decide. Once again I was smoking dope on a daily basis, but the lithium was holding me just. After I'd been away from Polytech for a few weeks, I'd started to level out again and the death obsession was receding. I didn't want to be idle though. It had been good to have the focus and direction of the nursing course and I wanted to continue this forward momentum. Meanwhile, I moved back into Mum's house. She was overseas at the time, so I took in a flatmate. Dave the Rave turned out to be a big pot smoker as well, so I was naturally pleased that we were so well suited. Every time that I hooked up with a new smoking buddy, I became more deeply entrenched in my addiction, and it would increasingly occupy more and more of my life. My interest in my non-smoking friends would decrease proportionately, and in this way my world got smaller and smaller. Whilst I kept up my double act for a long time, life was again becoming more about the dope than about anything or anybody else. My brother could see this, I think. He surprised me one day by showing up unannounced while I was vacuuming with Janis Joplin turned up full blast on the stereo. He stormed in and turned it down. "What are you doing that for?" I complained. "Aren't people allowed to listen to music while they're doing the housework? Bloody fun police." I resented the fact that people always seemed to be checking up on me, watching to see if I was mental today or doing drugs. Of course I was, but I didn't want them to know that. "Not if it's you, you're not," he replied. "It means you're either manic or stoned. Which is it today?" "Oh, don't be so ridiculous," I protested, knowing full well that there was some truth in this. "Anyway, I'm living here and I can do what I like." Slam. It's my life and I'll do what I bloody well like. The single greatest lie propagated by any addict. I'm sure my family and what friends I had left wished it was just my life, but it's never like that. A drug addict's behaviour will, not necessarily intentionally, have a negative effect on everyone around them. Even though I was smoking a lot of dope, surprisingly my mental health was still better than it had been in a long time, and I felt like I was making some progress. Then came an unexpected hurdle. I was at home early one morning when the phone rang. It was my auntie in Wellington. She said, "I've just been trying to phone your Nana and she's not answering. I'm worried about her. Can you go round and check on her?" So I got dressed and jumped in the car. I didn't even take my tobacco with me, as I was not expecting to be out for long. When I got to Nana's, the door was open. I called out and wandered around outside, but I couldn't see her. I went inside, and there she was, half sitting, half lying on an odd angle on the couch, her mouth wide open, and she was completely still. She was dead. Whoa! I'd never seen a dead body before, and I loved my Nana. She was 91, but she'd been fine when I'd last seen her a couple of days ago. Nana was a bit of a legend. She was an old-fashioned kind of person, from another time, and she lived a quiet and simple life. Us kids had always felt that she didn't really know what was going on in the world, especially with young people. The arrogance of youth. But during my admissions to mental hospital, she'd been a real trooper. She came over regularly with Mum to visit, sat through all the weird people doing and saying weird things, taking it all in her stride. She never said a word against me or overtly passed any judgment. She would just quietly say to Mum, "You know, Kate's just not herself at the moment." Talk about an understatement. Pelly likes to tell the story of the day Mum and Nana came to see me during my first admission to hospital. We were sitting in the dining area drinking cups of tea, and Mum said to me for the 100th time, "You seem to be getting better. The doctor says you're getting better." Wrong thing to say. I hated it when people told me I was getting better, because I'd never felt worse and better wasn't happening fast enough, and I could not get anyone to understand this. Next thing, I completely lost it. "I'm not getting any fucking better. Can't you see that? Stop saying that." And smashed, I picked up one of the chunky hospital cups and threw it against the wall, whereupon it loudly and spectacularly exploded into smithereens. Well, that sure woke everyone out of their malarial stupors. Pelly was delighted. She hadn't seen me having a tantrum yet, and she'd thought I was some kind of Miss Perfect mental patient. Not anymore. Mum yet again had cause to be completely horrified with my behaviour, but Nana, she just sat there in amongst everyone fussing around and trying to sweep up the pieces. There's a bit of a metaphor in there. And she didn't flinch. As they departed, she turned to me and said quietly, "You're just not yourself at the moment." And that, in a nutshell, was Nana. I think everyone in the family, including myself, expected me to have an adverse reaction to finding Nana dead and dealing with that grief. Actually, it had the opposite effect. You see, Mum was away, and for the first time in a long time there was nobody around to pick up the pieces. I had to keep my head on straight and deal with the immediate situation. I was discovering something new about myself, that when the occasion really called for it, I had some sort of inner reservoir of strength that lay below the surface. I had learnt in that lock-up cell that if I could get through the experience of forced seclusion, I could get through anything. What an amazingly powerful thing to learn, that I could get through anything. I was starting to be ruled by something other than fear. This was a huge shift, and I wanted more. I wanted to challenge that fear head on, so I went to the experts.